All right, welcome to another Three Mark Financial Foreign National Cyber Chat. In today's chat, we are speaking with our friends and partners over at John Hancock. We have Carly Brooks, Head of Advanced Markets, along with Sue Pirog, Managing Senior Underwriting Director, as well over at John Hancock. And first off, thank you both for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I am Russ Katz with Three Mark Financial. And before we get started, folks, if you haven't already, check out our exclusive Foreign National Playbook located on our website, threemark.com. There you'll find a treasure trove of insights encompassing general knowledge, as well as resources from all of our core carriers who are strongest in the space, such as John Hancock. If you have any questions or comments after watching today's discussion, please contact me or your sales contacts here at Three Mark. Okay, we have a lot to get to, so let's jump right in. Carly, we'll start with you. Can you share your background and how long you've been focused specifically in the foreign national space?
Sure, of course. So I've been with John Hancock for a little over 8 years, been leading our advanced markets team for the past 3.5 years. And prior to joining John Hancock, I worked as an attorney in the Boston area doing estate planning work for high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. And Russ, I would say my interest in foreign national planning kind of first stemmed from a lot of the questions that we'd get in the advanced markets group specific to Canada, US cross-border taxation issues. And as our parent company is Manulife, we tend to have a lot of questions and things that come in related to Canadian residents. And I found the differences in the tax systems to just be really interesting. And so it sort of stemmed an interest for me in some of the cross-border planning. And over the years, I've continued to develop that interest and now have some expertise in the foreign national market and some of the nuances that can come with that. So for example, getting familiarized with Mexican tax law, where we see a lot of opportunities coming from, and understanding the complex needs and reasons why those individuals are interested in US life insurance, I find to be fascinating. It's an ever evolving market. And so it's something that really has just piqued my interest and has become sort of an area of focus and passion for me over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years.
All right, fantastic. And Sue, same question for you, just a little about your background, how long you've been focused specifically in the foreign national space.
Right. I've been with John Hancock for almost 18 years now. So I would say that John Hancock has always been in the space for foreign nationals, but beginning of early 2023, I think Carly and I actually had multiple conversations, and we've started to see that there is an ever-growing need for coverage for the foreign nationals. So beginning in early 2023, John Hancock really started to focus on this demographic. So I think it's something that we've really grown. And as Carly said, there is a passion for it. There is a need for it. So working directly with Carly and how she sees the tax laws has worked hand in hand with our underwriting department.
All right, great. Okay, the next question, I think you guys are going to tag team this question. I'll go to Carly, you first. Can you provide an overview of the composition and function of John Hancock's foreign national team?
Absolutely. So one of the big changes that we made back in 2023 was dedicating an underwriting team that specializes in foreign national planning. And so I'll let Sue comment on that because that's the team that she leads and does such a great job standing up. But speaking from our support that we can offer on the planning side, all of our advanced markets attorneys are very well versed in the nuances of planning for wealthy global citizens, particularly as it relates to the US tax implications. And I do point that out because it can be complicated planning environment where you're dealing with both US as well as home country tax laws. But in addition to myself, we also have a dedicated financial underwriting liaison, and he is an attorney on my team who gets involved with some of the nexus and other financial decisions. So we're always working very, very closely with underwriting and with Sue's team. We also have one of my colleagues on my team who is a native Spanish speaker, and she has a lot of interest and expertise in the market as well.
And then from an underwriting perspective, what we've done since the beginning of 2023, when we did start to make this our focus, is we developed a specific team. So we have a team of 4 underwriters that handle all of the foreign national cases, 3 of which are senior, have been underwriting for quite some time. We do have a consultant, but we're working toward consistency and making sure that we're working closely with Carly's team. So it is a group effort on these cases. So that's what we have.
All right, excellent. Thanks, guys. Carly, can you talk about why foreign national market has become so increasingly attractive for producers?
Sure, this is a great question, Russ. And I don't think there's any one answer. I think it's a number of things. So one of the big reasons why I think we're seeing an increase in planning in this marketplace is just the simple fact that the economy is becoming increasingly global. It's not uncommon for high net worth clients to have interests all over the world. And I find a lot of the planning needs that these clients have are the same types of planning needs that we find for our clients that are here in the United States. So the need for increased liquidity, for wealth preservation planning and tax planning. There's a huge desire for asset diversification, and particularly understanding that U.S. products and U.S. carriers tend to offer a level of stability and security that is really desirable. So when you think of it from a pure asset diversification standpoint, that can be very attractive. And life insurance in the United States also is very tax efficient. And so these clients are looking for tax efficient solutions. We're also starting to see a migration of capital from South and Central America, where again, there's this desire to acquire assets in the US for that stability and security. We also have seen some countries where they have laws around insurance that can make purchasing insurance in their home country either challenging or less desirable than purchasing an onshore product here in the United States. So you may see that in countries like Mexico, which is the country we work with very often. In Mexico, it might be you may not be able to get the same kind of death benefit capacity, or it may be more expensive than what you might find with a US product. At the same time, too, I think we're finding US insurers are recognizing the opportunity and are increasingly more open to doing business with wealthy global citizens. As Sue mentioned, that's become a real focus for us at John Hancock. And so I think as carriers are becoming more open to this type of market too, in turn, we're starting to see more and more opportunities.
All right, thanks, Carly. And so in light of the market shift following COVID-19, have you observed any enduring impacts, or do you think we've returned to pre-pandemic business norms?
It's a great question. I'll let Sue actually comment on this as well, because I'm curious to hear her perspective from the underwriting. But from my perspective, I think, the COVID restrictions presented obvious challenges, and I think we did see a softening due to that, particularly in the Asian market. But I'm starting to feel like that's behind us, and we're really starting to see opportunities globally.
And I think the same could be said actually for domestic and foreign cases. So since we've now come out of, so to speak, the COVID environment, that market has opened up. It did shut down during that time, but I think now that we're out of that, I think they're seeing more of a need for life insurance overall. So yeah, we've definitely observed a lot of impact to opening that back up. So yes, and we've returned to pre-pandemic, yes.
Okay, great. So lots of opportunity, obviously. Carly, why are high net worth foreign nationals, I think John Hancock refers to those folks as wealthy global citizens, why are they interested in purchasing US life insurance?
So it's a great question. And as I mentioned at the outset, Russ, I think many of the reasons we see these clients interested in buying US insurance are the exact same things that we see for US citizens buying insurance. So it's helping to protect wealth for future generations. You might see life insurance used for income replacement, succession planning for US businesses. A big one, though, I actually find in this market, there's two primary reasons. And so the one is the client may have a US estate tax liability. So foreign nationals pay US estate taxes on US situs assets at just $60,000 or more of US situs assets. So there's a $60,000 exemption that foreign nationals are entitled to. But to the extent they have significant assets in the US, there's likely going to be a US estate tax liability, and there's going to be some liquidity needed to help pay for those taxes. They could also have home country inheritance or estate taxes that they're trying to plan for as well. So I think estate tax planning is one primary driver of opportunity in this market. The second is what I mentioned at the beginning is asset diversification. I think this continues to be very important in the marketplace, and we're seeing having this idea of the policy that's denominated in US dollars, that's very attractive as an asset among their other international holdings that they might have. And we can see insurance used for other types of planning techniques like pre-immigration planning and things like that as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carly. And what does death benefit capacity have to do with this? Where does that fit in? Where does that tie in?
Sure. So it's a really good question. I think when we're talking about capacity, this is the idea of how much death benefit can you purchase. And that's a huge driver in the foreign national marketplace. And we see that here at Hancock, which I'm sure we'll talk about momentarily, is that we do offer very high levels of capacity here at John Hancock. But what happens in some other countries is, for a variety of different reasons, they may not be able to obtain the same level of purchasing the same level of coverage. We see that in Mexico as an example, where high net worth clients are very interested in the stability of the US dollar, but they're also very interested in the capacity that you can get with purchasing a US product. In Mexico, it might be you may not be able to get as much coverage, or if you do, it's much more expensive. And so we see death benefit capacity being a driver in these sales for those high net worth clients that have global assets and they need large amounts of death benefit to cover those different planning objectives and needs.
Okay, great. And this may be more of a question for Sue, but I'll let you I'll let you make that decision. Can you talk about the new law that gives producers an even greater opportunity to plan, and why even more foreign nationals may need a U.S. life insurance policy?
Sure, of course. So this is something we've talked a lot about, and this new law is actually not a tax law, it's a reporting law. It's the Corporate Transparency Act, and that went into effect at the beginning of this year, although there are some compliance deadlines that may extend into next year. But the Corporate Transparency Act, like I said, it's not a new tax law. What it really is a reporting requirement for certain types of entities, both foreign entities as well as domestic entities. Includes things like LLCs now have to report certain beneficial ownership. And so why this is important in the foreign national market is really because foreign individuals who may own US assets, US situs assets, in the past, if they owned those in different types of entities, it'd be very common that you'd see different types of layering done through entity structures. Prior to the Corporate Transparency Act, there was no real oversight for the US government to have insight into that. And so what we found is that my hypothesis is that there has been significant underreporting of US estate taxes due by foreign national clients. We actually saw back in 2021, there were only 23 tax returns that paid estate taxes by foreign individuals. And I find that to be fascinating because, again, the thresholds are so low. If you have just $60,000 of US assets, those are subject to US estate taxes for foreign nationals. And so there's clearly a disconnect. And what I think the Corporate Transparency Act is going to do eventually is remove that veil and give greater transparency into the fact that these clients do have onshore US assets, and they may be subject to an estate tax liability that they didn't know they had before. And so that leads to the increased need for liquidity planning to help pay for those taxes. And so I think CTA, again, doesn't really change who's subject to estate tax, but it might put more foreign nationals on notice that they have this liability. And so CTA all goes through the FinCEN, which is part of the Treasury Department, just like the IRS. And I think those two departments eventually will start to talk to one another. And I think that greater transparency is a really good thing because nobody wants to be surprised at the back end with a tax bill that they didn't know they had. So today, if you're planning and understanding that you have these US tax liabilities, now you have some time to plan for that, and life insurance can be a really helpful tool to do that.
All right, thank you for all that information and explanation about the CTA. Lots of good information there.
Sure.
Sue, the next question is for you. Who qualifies? I can't even talk. Who qualifies for coverage with John Hancock, and also what are John Hancock's guidelines for solicitation, application, exams, and delivery, and other requirements or guidelines?
Right. So when we're talking about who qualifies for coverage, we're looking at any of the foreign individuals, non-US citizen, non-US resident, and they don't meet US residency definition, meaning that they are 183 days or more per year living in the US. So that's who would qualify for the coverage, but also consider US citizens living abroad. So sometimes we do forget that piece as well. So when we're talking about foreign residency, we're talking about foreign individuals, but also US citizens living abroad. So there are two different spectrums to that. When we talk about solicitation, all the solicitation does need to be completed in the US, which means that's from illustration to policy delivery, agent amount requirements, etc. There is one thing that we do allow would be e-delivery of policies. So that's one of the enhancements that we will be talking about as well, is that we do allow e-delivery for our policies. We do not have LPOA, limited power of attorney on these, but what we've done is we were able, again, to develop this e-delivery of the policies to help with that piece of it.
Okay, great. And I understand John Hancock has had some recent enhancements. Can you go through what they were?
Yes, and as I just mentioned, e-delivery is one of these. Again, when we started to focus, what would help us to stand out? So we've also now opened up exams being completed in Hong Kong and London, as well as APS translation. So, and we'll go into that a little bit, but those are some of the more recent enhancements. But as we've been talking about, the John Hancock focus has changed overall. So we're looking at assets a little bit differently, working with Carly a little bit differently, so we can capture some of these cases more than we were able to before.
Yeah, if I
All
can
right.
comment on that too, I think Sue summarized some of the changes really well, but working with her team and that dedicated resource, I think has also been invaluable with how we look at Nexus, where in the past, Nexus is so important and having that tie to the US. It's obviously when we're planning this market, you need to have that. But I find that now having that dedicated resource with Sue has been really helpful to streamline that. And some of the changes we made help to reflect what I think of as a holistic approach to looking at Nexus and understanding what the client's needs are. So things like a firm 15-day stay in the US, we don't require that anymore. Instead, we just want to see that there's ongoing physical and financial presence. And same thing with like things like attributing assets from husband and wife as a married couple. There may be cultural reasons why the assets are all titled in the husband's name. In the past, that could be very challenging to get insurance on the wife. Now we'll look at those as sort of a marital unit and attribute the husband's assets to the wife. So I think a lot of those smaller nuanced changes have really made a big impact.
I would agree with that. Thank you, Carly.
All right. And Sue, how do you handle language translations in what language or languages does John Hancock interpret medical records?
This has been one of the enhancements that we've been able to do. So right now we are allowing for APS a reimbursement for APS translation fees up to $500. So if we have a formal application and the translation has been completed by one of our vendors, which are TransPerfect, Language Line Solutions, and MIR, we're able to have those done. Previously, we were not. So again, this is one of our big enhancements for that, because we do require 5 years of APS records that are translated.
Okay, great. And how long is the application process typically?
We've really because we've made all of these enhancements and we have the specific team, I'm not seeing a big difference between the foreign cases and our domestic cases, because what we found is that the firms that we're working with, they know their business. So they're getting the APSs up front, they're getting their exams done up front. So all the solicitation truly does take place almost at one time. So those are coming in as a package. So we're not really seeing a big difference in that versus the domestic cases.
All right. And what are some of the challenges you encounter when trying to obtain information on foreign nationals, global citizens?
Right. And I'm going to tag Carly a little bit on this, because I think most of our challenges is because, again, the firms will submit the application, the exams, the APSs, and I think financial details, understanding the U.S. assets, understanding the financial need for the coverage. I think that is probably and I'm not saying it's a challenge, because we do get there. It's just understanding the U.S. assets, the U.S. need for coverage. One of the things that Carly and I we do work on are looking at owner and beneficiaries, LLCs, and trust. So understanding how that looks through to the client, to how the insured is titled to these different things. So Carly, I don't know if you want to add something to that.
Sure. No, I think you said it well, and I was actually going to mention the ownership. So we allow for U.S. entity ownership of our policy. So U.S. LLCs or trusts, as an example, and we'll sometimes want to see a copy of that document and understand who are the beneficiaries, who are the members, just to better understand who the parties at play are. And then on top of that too, when we're thinking about Nexus and the tie to the US, because that is such a key element of underwriting these cases, the more information that we can have at the outset, the smoother the process goes. And so I think the power of a cover letter and being really transparent with what the need for US insurance is upfront, and having a conversation, excuse me, whether it's with me or with Sue or someone else on our planning teams, can be invaluable in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. And Sue, what are some of the ways that underwriting has been able to work with the customer to be able to satisfy what John Hancock needs?
And Russ, I think actually meetings like this are very helpful. So what we like to do is make sure We know who the firms are, who is submitting the business, and consistency. And I think that's something that Carly and I have worked on a great deal, is the consistency. So once we start working with someone, understanding what they have and what their clients' needs are, what we need, that includes the financials, the cover letters, everything. So I think consistency is one of the big things, and just understanding your market and understanding what we need. So I think that has been the biggest thing that helps us to get exactly where we need, and it's enabled us to grow the way we have.
All right, excellent. And what sets John Hancock apart? What makes John Hancock unique?
I think in the past year and a half is our focus on this market. You know, we've established a team, we've established new guidelines, and I think one of the major things is our retention. So Carly had touched on that a little bit. So when we're looking at these clients, our auto bind and our internal capacity for different countries kind of sets us apart, because we're looking at the high net worth individual. So on A and B countries, we could have up to $40 million of auto bind capacity. So it's looking at that, and I think that's been our biggest success.
I completely agree. I think it's both twofold. So it's the underwriting expertise and ability to get these cases through the large case capacity. But I also think it's the John Hancock story too. So we as a company have over 160 years of experience and over 3.5 million customers worldwide. We've paid out billions of dollars in claims and have strong financial ratings. And I think in this marketplace in particular, like I mentioned, that stability and security is also really important. So it's not only choosing a carrier that can help with the underwriting and the large case expertise, which we have. I think we also have the strong backings of working for a carrier like John Hancock that is also important in a market like this.
Fantastic. And in terms of products, what does John Hancock offer to global citizens? Is, for example, is term available? Are there riders that are available as well?
Right. So right now it's permanent products only for personal purposes. We do allow term for U.S. business coverage. So if the owner and Benny is a U.S. business, we will allow term coverage. Riders, the living benefit riders, long-term care, critical illness, all chronic illness and waiver premium are not available. So, but we do allow our healthy engagement rider, the vitality rider, to be applied to those.
Excellent. And where can we find a list of John Hancock's approved countries?
Our field underwriting guide, I would have to make sure that it's currently updated, because that does change on a regular basis, or call one of the underwriters on the foreign team. We always have that available.
Okay, excellent. And I think we're at the last question here. So I'll let both of you chime in if you choose to. So we know that getting into the foreign national space is challenging. In terms of prospecting, where can we look for great candidates for life insurance? How do you bring up the topic of insurance? What are some of the questions producers can ask? What else can you tell us to to get us on the right path to success in this market?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. So I think
Yeah.
in terms of prospecting, I think it comes a couple of ways. So I think the first is we're seeing a lot of opportunities through banking relationships. So a lot of individuals at the large financial institutions have access to high net worth foreign national clients. And for different planning reasons, they may be looking to refer out that business. So they may have some help there that can be a good source for prospecting. I also find too, engaging with attorneys that specialize in cross-border planning can also be really important. So I have a network of attorneys that have specialties in different home country tax laws and cross-border planning. Those attorneys often are recommending insurance, but not always. And so sometimes getting in front of those attorneys to better understand what the client's holistic planning needs are can be important. And you may find there's liquidity needs as part of that conversation. So looking at, whether it's engaging in your local estate planning council or getting to know the attorneys in your town, I think that can be helpful. And then, I think part two of your question was, how do you bring up life insurance? I mean, I think it's, again, similar to how you'd prospect and engage customers onshore. It's understanding, would your estate be or your financial plans be better protected by additional liquidity? What type of assets do you own? Understanding both the liquidity profile as well as the rate of return that they're getting on those assets, and looking at life insurance both from a pre-tax equivalent standpoint. So I think it's a lot of the same things that we see, and I don't know that there's actually all that much nuanced difference in terms of teeing up the planning need for insurance.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carly. Well, we covered a lot in a short period of time. It flew by for me. Folks, whether
Likewise.
you're experienced or new in the foreign national space, you can see there's a huge opportunity, and we hope the information we discussed here today will help you elevate your business in the international life insurance market. Remember, if you have any foreign national cases, or again, if you're just starting out in the business or simply want to learn more about it, please contact me or your contacts here at 3Mark. Remember, we have the knowledge, expertise, and resources, as you can see, necessary to manage every aspect of your foreign national business, from carrier and product selection to underwriting and seamless case placement. Also, again, check out our foreign national playbook on 3mark.com. If you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me or your sales contacts here at 3Mark. With that, Carly and Sue, thank you so much again for your time today, and thank you for your continued partnership.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, we're so appreciative for our partnership with 3Mark. Thank you for having us.